Davis.
Thank you, Ron. Detective Burns, if you could please state your full name for the record.
My name is Detective Floyd Rodney Burns,
Where are you employed?
Gatlinburg Police Department,
What do you do with the Gatlinburg Police Department?
criminal investigator.
How long have you been a criminal investigator?
2008, 8 years. Next month I'll have 25 years in that force.
You don't have to give us the entire 25 years. Could you tell us what your duties and responsibilities have been, say, for the last 8 years as a detective?
We investigate cases that are assigned to us, felonies, sometimes misdemeanors, but it's mostly felony offenses.
I'd like to bring your attention to December 22nd, December 23rd of 2015, and ask you if you came to be involved in the investigation as a subject of this court hearing.
Yes.
Can you tell us, how did you first become involved?
I was on call that night. Every third week we're on call 24/7. I had worked my regular shift that day, the 22nd, and I was about to go to bed shortly after midnight, and I received a call. I think it was like 12:20 a.m. from the sergeant on duty. Well, actually from dispatch, and then I spoke with the sergeant on duty, Sergeant Bowen. He told me that LeCombe Medical Center had reported a young man injured, and he had been injured by a little stick, and he had suffered an injury to his rectum.
Okay, and what did you do when you got that call?
I went to LeCombe Medical to interview the victim.
Okay, tell us who was present when you got here.
And let me just interject just for a
Yes, sir.
moment. Detective Burns, you probably know, but just to be clear, we've had some discussion before you came in. None of the minors are to be identified in this hearing today.
I won't do that on purpose. I'll try my best not to mention any names.
Thank you. You may continue.
All right. You responded to the hospital, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, tell us who was present in the hospital, please refer to the by the name of the victim.
Refer to the
Just victim.
victim one, convict one. Okay. Victim one I interviewed. Also, I interviewed Coach Montgomery, Coach Williams, and a member of the medical staff at the hospital.
Okay, and who was present from the medical staff?
You know, I don't recall.
A doctor or nurse?
There was a doctor that treated him that I did not speak with. I spoke to the nurse that was in charge of his case.
And what
It's in my medical records, I just don't recall.
did you learn from the victim's presence at the coaches?
What did I learn from the victim? The victim told me that he had been assaulted by suspect one. He told me that after supper he went down the steps and he had went into his bedroom. And he said that he had been jumped by some boys there. And he said that then the suspect one had been pushing a little stick against his rear end, and that it had busted through his clothing and went inside of him. And he said that he yelled out and they dropped the little stick and ran out of the room. He told me that he told one of the players to go get Coach T, Coach Montgomery, and that Coach Montgomery had came down there. He didn't tell Coach Montgomery what happened initially. He did not tell Coach Montgomery what happened initially. Okay. Coach asked him what was wrong. He said that he was hurting back there. And during the course of the conversation, he said that he went to the bathroom and that he was bleeding and that he thought he just needed to go to the bathroom. And when he went to the bathroom, he was bleeding. He said that when he came back, he told the coach asked him, are you okay? And he said, no, I think I'm bleeding. So the coach had everybody leave the room, and he had him to pull his pants down. He checked him, see, if he was bleeding. And then it was sometime later that they actually told the coach what had happened.
Okay. At some point, did Coach Montgomery and Coach Williams take the victim to the hospital?
Yes.
How did you know that?
Well, the hospital called me. It's their policy anytime they have anyone that's injured in an assault to call the police department to report it, whether it's a juvenile or an adult.
And at the hospital, so we're clear, was Mr. Nagley at the hospital?
No.
The two coaches, Coach Williams, Coach Montgomery, were at the hospital.
Yes.
How would you assess Coach Montgomery's demeanor in terms of answering your questions, being cooperative with your investigation?
He was very forthcoming and cooperative. He wasn't deceitful in any way. He was kind of in a state of shock about the whole thing.
And how about Coach Williams?
Same thing.
Do you feel that they were trying to assist you in your investigation?
Oh, definitely. They gave me a whole lot of assistance in it. At this point, we only had, Patrol had called me and told me that they had 2 of the suspects identified. I spoke to Coach Montgomery about it out in the hallway. He said, actually, there's a 3rd boy involved in
He
this.
brought that to your attention?
He brought that to my attention. He provided me with their names, addresses, all the information that he had on them.
Did they make any efforts, did Coach Montgomery make any efforts to help you find out, identifying information about the families back in Hamilton County, so that you could then conduct the interview?
Yes, later, I asked him, I guess it was on Christmas Eve, I asked him for the contact information for other members of the team, telephone numbers, and he told me he would get me that as soon as possible. And he did. He emailed me a list that greatly assisted me in my investigation. The team came to see the victim in the hospital the Sunday, which is, 2 days after Christmas. And it really made it a lot easier for me because I was able to call the parents and get permission to talk to the teammates while they were coming up there at the hospital. It saved me from having to go to Chattanooga and drive all over the place. And it also enabled me to do a quicker investigation. I mean, while everybody's memory's fresh, before the media got it all, I got so blew up in the media, they were a lot more forthcoming, and they hadn't had as much time to talk to each other about it, but it just assisted my investigation a whole lot.
Coach Williams was assisting your investigation?
Yes, and his wife was very helpful in the investigation too.
What did she do?
Well, when we went back to the cabin, initially, down at the hospital, we were told by the medical staff that he wasn't hurt bad at all.
Okay, so now we're back, just to make sure we're clear.
Yeah, let's go back to 23rd. We're down there.
On the 23rd, you're at the hospital. What does the hospital personnel tell you?
That he's not seriously injured, that they had run a test, there was no air leakage, that he would be fine. He would be sore for a couple of days. He might have a little bit of bleeding. They didn't think he'd be able to play basketball the next day, and that he was about to be released from the hospital.
Okay.
Coach Montgomery, I asked the young man, at this point, we're not thinking he's seriously injured. It's, appears to be just, kids. They shouldn't have been doing what they were doing. There's no excuse for that, but it was just kind of like a hazing thing in which, they accidentally busted through his clothing and injured him.
Okay.
And where the other players were put through the same situation, and they were not injured in the days previous to this. So, but anyway, he told me that I asked the young man if he wanted to press charges. I interviewed him, and of course, you got to have a victim if you charge anybody. When he comes back to court, you have to have a victim. And he said no, but he didn't want to press charges. And I told him, well, I would still have to talk to his mother to make sure that, she didn't want to press charges. And I asked to speak with her, and Coach Montgomery told me that he had called her, talked to her once, and he had tried to call her again, but she was unavailable, that she had went back to work. And so I got her telephone number, and he told me that the young man told me he wanted to go back to cabin and stay with the team. And Coach Montgomery said that he had spoken to the mother and told her what happened, and that she was okay with him going back to stay at the cabin with the team. And I told him I didn't think that was a good idea, that anytime we had a juvenile that was injured, that I felt like that we needed to have him turned over to the parent if he has more medical problems. And just the fact that he had been injured up there by these 3 guys, he didn't need to go back up there. And I wasn't real sure about my status here because, they're on a school trip, okay?
Right.
That's right now, they're going to let him go back to the cabin, okay? The mom was okay with it. Later on, she told me she had agreed to let him go back. He wanted to go back, and I wasn't sure that I had a standing to order him not to let him go back. So I called Tim Norris, who's the assistant district attorney, and I told Mr. Norris that what I had, the situation.
This is Sevier County.
In Sevier County Court Judicial.
Right.
And Tim was of the same train of thought that I was, that he didn't need to go back to the cabin. And we discussed the fact too that the other three suspects, after I talked to them, they didn't need to be up here around the other kids too. They needed to go back. And so,
Did you separate them? Did you get the?
I had called patrol and had them to separate all three of them up at the cabin. And so anyway, Coach Montgomery, he was right on board with it. He said no. He said, I'll take him back home. He said his mom's at work, but said by the time I get there with him, she works third shift, she'll be getting off, and I'll definitely take him back home. And he said, no, them three guys are not going to play. They're going to go back too. And he's just in a state of shock. I mean, he's just,
Coach
shocked
in a
about
state of shock.
Yes, he's in a state of shock about the whole thing. Both of them are really. He told me, though, that he would like to take the young man back to the cabin and let him get his belongings. So what I did, I called patrol and asked them to segregate these three suspects in an area where the victim wouldn't see him, they wouldn't see the victim, and so that he could go down to his room and get his clothing.
Was that done?
Yes, it
All
was.
right. And then, how did the victim end up coming back to the hospital?
Well, after we got to the cabin, he didn't appear to be in pain down there at LeConte Medical, and I wasn't sure if they'd give him pain medication, but he didn't appear to be in pain. But when he started walking through the cabin and started down the steps, he started, kind of walking like this, and he was having trouble negotiating the steps. And I was watching him, and he got down there, and I asked him, do you need some help, picking the stuff up? And he said no, and he went to bend over, and he was picking up, some of his belongings to put in his bag. And he just collapsed on the floor and said, oh, I'm hurting. And he said, I think I'm bleeding. And then he said, I think I'm hurting in my private part. And so Coach Montgomery, he came there and he said, I guess I need to take him back to the hospital. And I said, no, we need to call paramedics. We need to call paramedics. I don't want liability of this.
Was that done?
Yes, I called paramedics. And the paramedics came, and Coach Montgomery went with the paramedics to take the young man back to the hospital. I spoke with patrol, and I got the clothing that the victim was wearing. I called for them to put up 2 pool sticks to identify which one they felt like was used and to separate the 2 pool sticks from anybody else having contact with them. They told me that the kids had already handled them after that they had played pool afterward. I also went up to the dining area and had the kids brought in one at a time. The coach's wife really helped me, though. She called, my cell phone wouldn't get out, and I had to call and get permission from the parents before I could interview the kids, read them their rights, and parents read their rights and have them to agree to waive the rights if they were willing to make a statement. And my phone wouldn't get out, and so we brought them in, and she sat there at the table with me and reassured the parents. And she told the parents, I'm going to sit here too. And first, the main suspect, his dad was reluctant to let this young man talk. And had she not been the one to call him and talk to him, I don't think, if I just called him cold turkey, I don't think he would have made any kind of statement at this point.
With her assistance, did the suspect number 1 give you a statement?
Yes, he did. His father was wavering on it, and he said, well, I'm okay with it, but I'm worried about it. And the young man said, Dad, just let me tell him what happened. And so he agreed. He said, okay, that's fine, go ahead. And she assured, she had broke the ice with the parents, and that was so instrumental in getting these boys to talk to
Coach
him.
Montgomery's wife did that with the other parents as well, right?
Yes, and it was so instrumental in reassuring the parents. And I don't know that I would have gotten anywhere in my, getting my confessions had she not did this. And she stayed there, and she had a calming influence on these young men.
And as a result of that, you were able to get knowing and voluntary confessions from people who actually committed the assaults?
Yes, sir. Yes.
You were able to make that part of the case file?
Yes.
Your prosecution in Sevier County?
Yes, sir.
Is there anything else that happened back here at the cabin that night of significance after you took the statement?
No, we gathered evidence. I photographed the scene. I I went back later and, several days later, and after I, photographed all the rooms and stuff, but,
With your permission, did Coach Montgomery's father drive the 3 suspects back down?
yeah, they were leaving with him whenever I was leaving. That he had came to pick him up. That was my understanding, that he was going to take him back, and he was leaving with him.
Compliance with your instructions?
Yes.
To be separated and
Yes.
put back in their parents' custody?
Yes.
Right. And then, from your point of view, in the course of your investigation as a detective in Sevier County, with this criminal complaint you're going to file in court, do you feel that the appropriate parties were notified?
Yes.
Was medical personnel aware of the full extent and nature of these injuries?
Well, initially, apparently they weren't, because they said he wasn't hurt. If that's what you're asking.
Now, I guess what I'm saying is, from what I understand, you were notified by medical personnel, correct?
Of the seriousness of his injuries
In
later?
terms of how you first got called?
Yes, how I first got called, yes.
I'm asking just specifically that. Do you feel like once you knew the seriousness of the injuries, you communicated with medical personnel and ultimately they understood the seriousness of the injuries?
Yes.
Do you feel that the coaches, Coach Williams and Coach Montgomery, assisted you in getting that information to the appropriate medical personnel? There were 2 trips to the hospital?
On the second trip to the hospital, I wasn't involved in that.
Okay, so that's just the coaches?
Yes, they took him back to the hospital. Like I say, I'd worked all day and I worked all night. I left about 6 o'clock that morning. I went home and I slept for a little while. And I got up around lunch, about 1 or 2 o'clock. I spoke with someone at the police department, and they told me that the young man had been transferred to UT, that he had to have emergency surgery.
Right.
After having went to back to Lacan. Lacan had tried, I was told Lacan tried to call in a surgeon, and the surgeon maybe didn't have privileges there, didn't want to do the surgery. They sent him to UT where he had underwent surgery. Later that afternoon, I spoke with his mother, and I spoke with the district attorney again, and I spoke with my supervisor about the incident.
Okay. And do you feel like all the appropriate authorities were notified that need to be notified through your investigation?
Yes.
At some point, Mr. Navely, you were contacting Mr. Navely as the athletic director, who happened to be up there at the game?
I didn't speak to Mr. Naley until Sunday, which was, how many days? 4 days, 5 days after the event. Christmas was Friday, Saturday, 26th, 27th, I guess is when I spoke to Mr. Naley.
And maybe my point, maybe I asked the 4 questions. Do you understand Mr. Navely was not up there as athletic director, either in the cabin or at the hospital?
I never saw him at the hospital or at the cabin, as far as I know. Now, like I say, my focus was I've been pulled out of bed here, and, I'm up here at this cabin interviewing these kids, the parents. It's not like an adult where you can go and read them their rights and just, you've got to, go through a different channel. You have to go through the parents. You have to, I was so focused on what I was doing, talking to the patrol officer to respond to the scene, but I never saw him there.
Right.
If he went up there later, or as I was leaving, I'm not aware of it.
Is there anything that Coach Montgomery or Coach Williams could have done to further assist your investigation as was done?
No, they were very cooperative. The reason, we got this, we had this tied up here in Sevier County. They assisted us. We got our confessions. We filed our petitions. Juvenile court was notified. We did everything that we needed to do, and they were very instrumental and cooperative with me.
Okay, then I'll ask one last question. Is there anything you can think of that they didn't do that they should have done as coaches or as supervisors of these players?
Not really. his first, I mentioned to him it would have been better if he had called us, but his first thought, which, it's like a police officer too, your first duty is to treat the injured. That's what he did. He took this kid to the doctor, told him what happened. There wasn't no cover up or anything like that.
So I have to.
Detective Bird. First up for Mr. Montgomery. During the course of your investigation, what protocols and policies did you follow?
our general investigation policies in our manual.
And you concluded that investigation.
Well, actually, yes. I mean, I didn't conclude it for several weeks afterward. I had one potential witness that invoked his right to an attorney. And so I really didn't completely conclude it until I spoke with him.
Did you ever call PCS?
I tried to call him on Christmas Eve, and there was no one at the office. Not that, to me, it was an assault. It wasn't sexual really in nature. Their intent was not, his pants weren't pulled down. They weren't doing it for sexual gratification. This was something stupid that kids do that shouldn't have been done, but it wasn't it wasn't done for sexual gratification or really so much it wasn't sexual in nature. It was an assault, really. And it just happened, the end result met the definition of aggravated rape, you know what I mean?
So, having called PCS on December 24th, did anyone call you back?
No, there was nobody in the office, and then I tried to call one of my friends, and like I say, I had been in touch with the district attorney's office on it, and no one. They called me back on, I got a call from DCS on the day we arraigned those boys, Wednesday, I think the 30th, and it was from Jackie Schultz, and she told me that she had heard about it through the media, and that she told me what her function was, which was to investigate. But it was really ironic that she called me because we were about to go into the arraignment, or maybe we had just gotten out of the arraignment. And I was talking with Rolf Strassenvogel and Patrick Harrell. And they are assistant district attorneys. They have been guiding me in this investigation. And Rolf told me, he said, you might want to go ahead and give the DCS a call, not for our investigation, but because they may want to investigate what these players are alleging, the three suspects are alleging, and that is that this was kind of a tradition, the hazing thing, and that what the victims were saying, and that is that they had been subject to roughhousing, harassment, physical assaults all season, but it had happened down there at the school. So they may want to look into that. And it was while we were having that conversation, actually, that Ms. Schultz called. And that day, we faxed her our paperwork. I mean, we immediately started getting our paperwork together. We shared our case file with her up to that point. I told her everything I knew about the case. She told me that Rachel Priest would be calling me, or for me to call Rachel Priest. That's what she told me, to call Rachel Priest, which I did. I called her. After we played phone tag a few times, I got in touch with her.
Did DCS ever dispatch anybody to work with you?
Not that I recall, no.
So
now I went with Ms. Schultz. I allowed her to go with me when I interviewed that last juvenile several weeks after the event had occurred. She asked if she could go along and sit in on the interview, and I was fine with it. I mean, yeah.
But not during your initial set of interviews?
No, and when you get DCS involved, I mean, and they do a very good job. A lot of them do a very good job, but but I've had incidents in which DCS were doing a parallel investigation, and it's torpedoed my investigation. I mean, they've talked to witnesses and shared information that I didn't want shared, and in one case, they told the suspect that they had been cleared, and they didn't have to take a polygraph, and so I mean, we can get into a lot of stories like this, but
tell me this. Based on your experience in your investigation, did your thought process follow this? The child was safe.
Yes.
He wasn't in danger.
No. He's been treated for his injuries.
An adult wasn't a perpetrator.
No.
He wasn't going to be exposed to the alleged perpetrators.
No.
It wasn't a forensic interview.
No, I mean, he's in the hospital bed. And two, the quicker that on any crime against person, any crime basically, but especially crime against person, the quicker you work it and interview your witnesses while everybody's memory's fresh, and before everybody talks to each other and their point of view gets contaminated, you need to move fast on it, and that's what I tried to do in this case. I give my Christmas Eve off, my vacation. I give up half a day on Christmas with my family. I was off that weekend. I went and worked that weekend on this case. You know, I did all that to try to make sure that I did everything that I needed to do to get the correct information and to quickly be able to ascertain the facts on it.
If I'm not counting, we went from December 22nd until the 29th or 30th, when they were charged as a week.
Yes.
That's a pretty quick investigation.
Well, I actually obtained the petitions on them on Christmas Eve on the suspects, but the
So there was no delay.
no on the major charges, the aggravated rape and the aggravated assault against the 3 suspects on the one main victim, one victim that was injured, victim number 1. I obtained those petitions on Friday, Christmas Eve. And we had a conversation with the DA, the assistant DA, Stroll and with Sarah Reynolds, the Sevier County Juvenile Court officer, who, you know, has to run it by the judge before the felony petitions are signed off on. And all this had to be done. I mean, this is another procedure. You have to get everybody together, call in the judge on the holiday, and get him on the phone, all this stuff. Anyway, all this was approved, but they decided that it would be in the best interest from a logistics standpoint too, and for my investigation too, to wait till Monday to serve the petitions.
Really understand that.
Now the victims' mom, they were upset. You know, they want to put in jail right then. But you know, I really didn't have. I mean, and it was a good thing I didn't, because it came up that there was other victims, and you know, when you start putting people in jail, all the kids are going to shut down. Nobody's going to talk. And we thought that it would be better to wait until Monday to serve the petitions.
So help me with the timeline now, so I can make sure that I'm clear with the report. Late in the hours of December 22nd, the incident occurs.
Yes.
You're responding wee early morning hours of the 23rd.
I got the call at 12:20. I don't know what time it came in. The police department, probably within 10 minutes.
So that's the 23rd.
Yes. Shortly after midnight on 23rd.
24 hours later, you send petitions from the juvenile court of Sevier County
Yes.
where the incident occurred.
Yes.
Where all the perpetrators were,
Do what?
where the perpetrators were at the time that the incident occurred,
In Sevier County, yes, sir.
where the victim was
Yes, sir.
at the time the incident occurred.
Yes, sir.
All within 24 hours, the 23rd of your involvement to Christmas Eve, the 24th.
Yes, sir.
You got a petition before the court.
Yes.
Okay. Was any of this at the player's home? Is this occurred at the player's home?
No. It occurred at a rental cabin in Sevier County. Now, the allegations of previous assault prior to the incident were allegedly happened at Ooltewah High School and in the locker room in the study hall.
Now, tell me this. Did any player tell you that Coach Montgomery, Coach Williams, athletic director Nagley, or any school administrator knew of the conduct of the event?
They were adamant. The victim number 1, I asked him, I said, he told me that he knew that they were going to do this to him because they had done the other freshmen this way. They got through in a hot tub, and that he had saw him do this to the other freshmen. And I said, well, why didn't you tell the coach? And I asked him, I said, did the coach know? No. Why didn't you tell the coach? I just didn't.
Did the other players that year, the other 11, they said the same thing?
Yes. Nobody, and I asked him twice. I went back, and I believe that my recordings of this will support what I'm saying. But I know that I asked each one of them twice to make sure that the coach didn't know. The assistant coach didn't know. The athletic director, nobody told anybody, what even his own son didn't tell. I mean,
Would it surprise you if weeks later, suddenly now, players have a different recollection?
yes, and that was what I run into. I mean, one of the mothers of one of the kids said that they had told somebody, but that mother wasn't very credible. The more I talked to that mother, the less credibility she sent me on a wild goose chase about a video. She spoke to the media, saying that she was speaking for the mother of the main victim, And that lady, the mother of the main victim got very angry with me, with all the media coverage. She said, we didn't want this. We don't want this. I mean, you're victimizing him all over again. And I can certainly, she said, that woman does not speak for me.
Can you tell me why you didn't charge Coach Montgomery?
With what? What should I charge him with? I mean, he did nothing wrong. In my opinion, he did nothing wrong. I thought he set a good example for the young man. I mean, he told the truth and didn't try to cover anything up.
Can you tell the court what your conclusions were from your investigation about this incident?
My investigation was that you had 3 young men that had been treated in a similar fashion in a hazing incident in which they were not injured. This young man had on a thin pair of knit sweatpants that were pretty well worn and a very thin pair of underwear. It poked through his clothing where it didn't poke through the other ones, and he was injured. Based on the statement made by my last witness who was in the room, that he said the whole thing from the time they were holding him down, pushing, the whole thing lasted about 20 to 30 seconds, and as soon as it busted through and went inside of him, they said, the main one said, oh, beep, dropped the pool stick, and they left. There was no, rape, torture. There was no screams of anguish. He said that the young man fell down on the floor, said, oh, I'm hurt. And he told him to go get Coach T. And he said he went upstairs and got Coach T. But even then, they didn't tell the coach what had happened. And the other thing, too, all this about the pool stick, the tip of the pool stick, I was told that that's what the UT surgeons had recovered, and that's what I needed to go get. I went and got that, put it in evidence, but locked it up in my office. I looked at it several days after we had did our arraignment, and it's not a piece of the pool stick. It's a piece of his clothing. It's a piece of fabric from his sweatpants. That's what that was that they removed from him. So, I mean, what this case actually is much smaller than what it's been blown up to be.
Detective Burns, let me ask you this. In your experience investigating cases like this, did Mr. Montgomery willfully fail to do anything?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Did Coach Williams fail to do anything?
Not to my knowledge, no.
How about Mr. Naylor?
Not to my knowledge, no.
I don't have any other questions.
Just as the judge, lawyers, those last words that I promised. Coach Williams got you in every way he could.
Yes, sir.
Coach Williams never tried to hide anything as far as you know, did he?
No, sir.
Completely forthright and forthcoming at the hospital, is that right?
Yes, he had less knowledge than what Coach Montgomery, but Coach Montgomery wouldn't intend to the young man. I mean, Coach Williams wasn't as involved in the situation.
Was your understanding that when this incident occurred, Coach Williams was actually there punishing another player using bad language?
I had heard something to that effect that they had, that he had made him run up I know that he administered some discipline. Yeah, I think he made him run up down a slope out there on the hill for doing something. I don't recall now what it was, but that came to my attention when interviewing some of the players.
Because he had heard him using bad language.
I don't remember what it was for, sir.
All right. So your investigation uncovered no proof that any of these gentlemen to my left knew of any prior incidents with these players?
No, as a matter of fact, Mr. Naylor told me, he said, and my investigation revealed no prior juvenile records on any of the 3 suspects involved. Mr. Naylor told me, he said, these are not 3 kids that we see in our office. He said, we've not had trouble with these kids in the past.
There's been much made in the media stating to me that this young man was covered with feces and blood.
That is absolutely false from what I found out in my investigation. A lot of the things that came through the media, I don't even think came from the family. They were just people that called stuff into the media.
But that's an absolute false statement.
As far as I know, it is.
Thank you.
Sir, I'm somewhat confused, but hopefully I'll get on the right path. You said people had to run up hills for using bad language?
One of the players had told me that, and I don't know if this was that day, that evening, or some prior, and I didn't say they had to run up the hills because they used bad language. All I'm saying is that one of the players told me that Coach Williams had disciplined a couple of them for whatever incident that they did, whatever violation, and I think it was prior to this, and he had made them run, is what I understood, like run up a slope.
All right, your investigation before, we're talking about the December incident, what did you learn about the tradition or the hazing, as you referred to a moment ago, in break examination that occurred at the high school in regard to the basketball team?
I don't quite understand your questions. Come again.
The players indicated to you that they knew they were going to get hazed and beat up, things of that nature, correct?
Yes.
All right, what did they tell you about that tradition?
Well, first of all, I asked him, I said, were there any cuts or bruises for what happened down there in Ooltewah? Well, no. Did you really get hurt? No. Were they really hitting you hard? Well, they were hitting us, but not as hard as they could.
You
Okay.
seem to be minimizing all this.
No, I'm just telling the truth, sir. I'm just telling the truth, okay? That's what we're here about today, is the truth.
No more argumentative than an hour-long cross-examination you've had to endure, Judge.
They also told me the senior on the team, who was the main violator, had told me that he had been victimized himself in this way when, I think he told me it was when they went to Hilton Head. And I questioned him, I said, I made some inquiry about a pool table. He said, well, this happened over in Hilton Head. And the way he talked, I mean, it was a tradition for the freshmen to be hazed, for lack of a better word, bullied, whatever term you want to use, sir.
So the main suspect talked about when he was a freshman, this same behavior was perpetrated upon him.
That's what he said, yes, but I don't know if that was true or if he was just trying to minimize, his involvement or to excuse his involvement, but he did say that.
The main suspects indicates to you when he was a freshman at Ooltewah, he was violated with a pool stick.
He didn't say that he was, he said they did the same thing to me, is what he said. Now, we would, if we could play my recording, we would have exactly what was said. My computer, last night I couldn't get it to work. I tried to go back, so I'm testifying from memory. But there was an incident in which he said that the same thing, if I'm recalling correctly, that this kind of thing had happened to him.
And what did you take the same thing as?
That someone had stuck a pool stick up against his rear end too on the outside of his clothing.
And so that had happened some 4 years earlier.
If he's telling the truth, yes.
All right. And so these freshmen become, I guess you're aware this is going to happen to them.
Yes.
All right. What happened to what did they say happened to Ooltewah?
They said that in the locker room, sometimes they would turn out the lights. And it was mainly the suspect number one that was the ringleader in this. But that this had happened once or twice in Ooltewah, where in the locker room, they had to be beat in on the team. In other words, being freshmen, and they would turn off the lights, and they would run in and start punching them. And then he said the main victim told me up at study hall one day that the main suspect, the one that had the pool stick, had started hitting him and said he had gotten mad and he had struck him back. And, he said, what are you doing? You're not supposed to, and I'm paraphrasing all this, but he had been shocked that he had retaliated against him because he's supposed to take it, he's a freshman, And he said that the main ringleader kind of had a problem with him after that because he stood up to him.
When was that in relationship to the December incident?
I don't, it was sometime previous to that. But now, the three suspects didn't come on the basketball team after football season ended. So it would have been sometime between the time they come to Gatlinburg and when they came on the team after the football season ended.
Did the three main suspects exhibit this type of behavior to the football team as well?
Not to my knowledge. I didn't question about anything like that.
All right. So there's this history or tradition, whatever you want to call it, of hazing or beating into a teen?
That was what was told to me by the suspects.
By the suspects, not just...
Well, the victim said that they had experienced it themselves, that year, but the victim said it really didn't start till the 3 boys came off the football team.
But nonetheless, the suspects and the victims all talked to you about this hazing or beating in or whatever, however we want to characterize it.
Yes, sir, they did, yes.
Now, are you aware of the Tennessee law about mandatory reporting abuse or sexual abuse?
Yes.
You didn't report this, did you?
It didn't fall within the parameters of what we report. I mean, this was a get-on-kid assault. I mean, it wasn't really sexual in nature. I did try to see...
It wasn't sexual in nature?
No.
All right, how do you come to that conclusion?
Well, there was no sexual gratification. They didn't pull his pants down. The other 3 victims, they weren't penetrated, and it was the same ritual.
Do you know what state law, how it defines sexual gratification?
Yes, I do, yes.
And what is that definition?
Well, the definition is penetration of the orifices of the body by penis or an animated object, yeah. I mean, I can't quote it, which I'm sure
However
you
slight,
can.
you can call that
Yes.
anything?
However
And
slight.
that nowhere in that definition is sexual gratification mentioned.
It's not a component of rape, it is for sexual battery, but they weren't trying to do it. As soon as it penetrated his pants, they stopped. Their intent, and this is what they said too, we never meant for this to happen, we didn't mean for this, and I think they were being truthful when they said that.
This just didn't happen on one night though, right? The other 3 players were on previous nights.
One of them was like a couple of days before. I'd have to go back and look at my notes, but yes, I mean, the short answer is yes. One of them had been hazed.
Short
like
answer
this.
is yes.
One of them had been hazed like this a couple of 3 days prior, and the other 2 had, I got conflicting stories, but the other 2 finally settled that it was the day before Mom was hurt.
So, and you charged 1 count of aggravated rape?
Well, they said that it didn't go up inside of it, if that's what where you're going with this.
I didn't decide where I'm going with this yet. That's my question to you.
Yes, I counted each of the 3 suspects were charged with 1 count each of aggravated rape and aggravated assault.
But the other 3 all talked about the pool cue in the same manner except they weren't hurt.
Well, they said it didn't go up inside of them. It didn't penetrate their clothing and go up inside of them. I mean, initially, only 1 of the other 2 wanted to press charges.
But that doesn't mean, what does that matter?
You gotta have a victim if you go to court.
Okay, but you've never been involved.
If they're not a compliant victim, how are you gonna charge and go to court if you don't have a victim there?
Have you ever charged somebody with a crime and not necessarily had a victim speaking in loudly about wanting to prosecute?
You gotta have a victim.
So, what's yes or no to that question?
No, I mean, no.
So, if the one that injured the child is a rape, why is it not a rape in the other 3 instances? If
Well-
sexual gratification is not required.
It didn't go up inside of them. I wasn't told that it penetrated them.
You recall one of them talked about the main victim talking about the night before a victim was violated in the same manner and screamed throughout the cabin. You remember that?
He said that he heard him yelling. He heard him yelling inside the cabin. Yeah. Inside. He said he heard him outside the door. He said they had shut the
How
door.
many rape cases have you investigated prior to this?
Numerous.
What's that mean?
I don't know. I haven't got a count. You can call the court, I guess, and find out. I don't know,
I can do
sir.
that later, but I was wondering to know if you have an idea.
No, I don't. About quite a few. I've got 3 investigations going right now.
So it's your opinion to charge somebody with rape, injury has to occur?
No, injury doesn't have to occur, but, you have to have components of rape.
Okay, and a pool cue into someone's rectum, that would fit with the definition of sexual penetration.
That's what I charged, sir. Pull stick went into that young
I'm
man's
just asking
rectum.
yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, and so if that's good for one, and they were all, as you mentioned a moment ago, treated in a similar fashion, but for the injuries, that would be 4 rapes, not 1.
Sir,
Yes or no?
no, that is not correct.
That's,
They didn't go in their rectum,
did you
okay?
not say a moment ago that they were all treated in a similar fashion, except for injuries?
You're trying to twist what I said, sir. That's not what I'm
asking you,
saying.
is that
That's
what
not
you
what
said?
I'm saying,
You let
sir.
the witness answer the question.
Mr. Bell, your witness is doing fine. Go ahead, Mr. Kinsler.
Did you not mention a moment ago in direct examination that all 4 of the individuals were treated in a similar fashion, but for the injury to the main victim?
They were treated in the same fashion, but it didn't bust through their clothing and go up inside their rectum.
They were treated in the same fashion, right? That's
Yes.
your
It's been
word.
asked and answered.
Yes, I mean,
We're just trying to get to the truth, remember?
It didn't, we have been trying to get to the truth. It
Yes.
didn't go up into his rectum. He's testified that these other gentlemen's rectums. He's testified.
Well, he's testified around it. Over, I think he's got it.
When you took pictures of, I guess, of the cabin at the crime scene, did you do on that particular day, the 23rd?
yes, I didn't take complete pictures. I took pictures of the area where it occurred, the bedroom, and then the pool area
Did you observe?
at the entrance.
Was there any blood? Let's talk about the main victim, where he was injured. Was there any blood in that area?
No.
All right. Had there been any measures to clean up that area?
I found out later that the coach's wife had cleaned up some blood that was in the bathroom from after where he had went in and bled.
All right. Where were the main victim's clothes found, sir?
Where were they found?
Yes.
They were in a bag in the trash can.
Okay. Who put those there?
I understood that the coach's wife did.
Was that information offered to you, or you just found it part of your investigation?
I found it was part of my investigation.
So nobody told you his clothes were thrown?
Let me think about that a minute. I asked Patrol where his clothes was, and I told them to make sure that they had his clothing, and when I asked them about it, they couldn't find it, and they went and got, that's right, they went and got Miss Montgomery, and she told me that she had put them in the trash. Now, I initially thought she bagged them up, put them in the trash, but later on, I found out that the victim himself had bagged up his clothing. It was wet, and it had a little bit of fecal matter on the underwear, and it was wet and smelly, so I think he was embarrassed and he bagged it up.
Blood?
I didn't see no blood, sir, no. Now, there may be some, and I didn't see it by the naked eye, but I didn't see no blood, no.
And so, and you mentioned that there were 2 pool sticks that were used.
Well, there was one pool stick that was used. I was given 2. I took them both in evidence, and I wrapped them. I wrapped them at the scene and took them to the station. And that was what made me open up the evidence later on and look, because when I looked at them, the tips were still on there. And, a long time ago, they used to put felt on the end of the tips, but now it's kind of like a hard plastic. And I looked and thought, this ain't broke off. So it was several days later, I went back to the cabin, and I told them to get me all the pool sticks. And I looked around, that's all they saw, and they had 2 layout patrols, what I'm talking about. So I went back up there, and they were 2 more sticks, but they too had very warped tips on them. So that's what got me to open up the canister and look and see that it wasn't a pool stick at all, but it was a piece of clothing from the victim's sweatpants.
Does that somehow minimize what he went through?
I don't think so, but I mean, it's the facts is, like we're saying, the truth, it's not the tip of a pool stick, it's a piece of his clothing.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Let me just say to the media in the room, I will find it contemptuous if anyone does anything with the name that the detective uttered once. I think that's clear and I've said.
No proof. No proof.
Judge, I think it's pretty clear for all the testimony that they're, and let me clarify, I think the court essentially held in abeyance the rulings on the 403 violations our first time before, is that correct? And then allowed the preliminary hearing with 605 violations. And I think it's very clear on a probable cause basis that 4 sexual assaults that
Well, actually, that's not completely correct. I think I ruled it in the court too.
Right.
But we held everything to the day at everyone's request to kind of clear in the hearing with 605 violations.
And I think it's clear that there were 4 sexual assaults that occurred individuals with first-hand knowledge, Mr. Montgomery, Mr. Williams, and Mr. Magley, had that information, and they did not report it as required by law. It's fairly straightforward in that regard. They had first-hand knowledge. They chose to sit on that knowledge and not do anything. Yes, Mr. Montgomery took an hospital and things of that nature. The state law is very clear that you have to report this to either your honor, the sheriff, city chief, or local DCS, and that was not done. And proof, more than adequate proof was presented to that fact.
Your Honor, a number of things are clear today. None of them supported the complaint that was lodged with you without notice to these three gentlemen. Specifically, no proof introduced today acknowledged that either Mr. Montgomery, Mr. Williams, or Mr. Nagley took any willful action. Every witness here identified that they cooperated, that they were forthright, they didn't try to hide anything, and in fact, rendered aid to an injured individual, first and foremost. You've heard Detective Burns tell you that Coach Montgomery was in shock. You've also heard that Coach Montgomery learned at the same time as Mr. Burns what happened to this child. General Pigston's tried to convince you that 3 players suffered the same treatment as 1. Detective Burns said that's not so. He was very clear and adamant with respect to that. You also heard DCS's representative tell you that they screen out this kind of conduct and refer it to law enforcement. Detective Burns, who was investigating. You heard the DCS representative tell you the definitions that they use of child abuse and child sexual abuse, and that when there's no relationship criteria met, that definition is inapplicable, and as a result, they refer it to law enforcement. Detective Burns. At no point did the DCS representative tell you that despite Mr. Montgomery knowing what to do as a foster care worker, that he failed to do so. In fact, her answers to all the questions about what he was supposed to do based on their policies and procedures were no. More important than anything else, this statute that General Pigston is pursuing is unclear. Your Honor has said it. We acknowledge it. It does not have specific definitions. It does not mandate a time other than the word immediate, which I know, Your Honor, is undefined in the statute. And if you take the Webster's definition of immediate, it simply means soon, quickly. Detective Burns even told you that, notwithstanding that, on Christmas Eve, 24 hours after he was notified, he called DCS and no one answered the phone. We cannot take a statute and say that everyone becomes a mandatory reporter when all steps that are taken, including DCS's own policies that say it's not us, it's law enforcement, and say that because law enforcement was notified by the hospital, that suddenly these 3 men failed to report. Because to do that opens up Pandora's box, specifically with respect to child abuse. Here's the issue, Your Honor. If we define it this way, if we allow charges to be brought this way, what happens is, by way of example, any parent that learns that their 15-year-old is engaged in sexual congress with their boyfriend, girlfriend, who's 16 or 17, is responsible for reporting to DCS according to the way the complaint's written. And parents that don't do so face misdemeanor, Class A convictions, fines, and 1129 in jail. There's no mechanism in the statute to dictate how we learn that information. It's all self-reported. So it is possible that one parent says, oh my goodness, I need to report. And it is also possible that another parent says, shh, we don't need to say anything. Coach Montgomery didn't take that position. He said, priority, injured player, receive medical treatment. And he did so. When asked by medical personnel, you know, I have to report this. Yes, indeed do. When asked, hi, Coach Montgomery, law enforcement, I'm going to investigate. In fact, how can I help you? There was 2. No, there's 3. Here are their names. Here's the information. This man did not willfully, knowingly, fail to do what the law set forth. What he did was respond first as a reasonable, ordinary citizen with knowledge of what to do based on his years of experience under DCS policy, which is it's law enforcement. Law enforcement. Law enforcement. This matter, for whatever reason, has affected 11 families. The victim's family, the perpetrator's family, the other 3 individual players, these 3 gentlemen, and waiting in the wings are the 3 Hamilton County Department of Education individuals and their families that we talked to today. None of it today demonstrates that any of these men willfully failed to report. Based on the definitions present in the statute, DCS's own policy, where you heard her say, we don't take that, that's law enforcement because of the relationship criteria and their ages. Detective Burns told you that the child was safe. He was not exposed to the perpetrators. There were no other issues surrounding a need for him to call DCS. He did it because he thought he wanted to talk to somebody. What we have here is an overreaching on the part of the statute that punishes conduct which an ordinary reasonable citizen doesn't recognize. And even citizens with training, like Mr. Montgomery, recognize the rules. And the rules here are law enforcement. So reported, so investigated, perpetrators charged. Mr. Montgomery didn't willfully fail to report. He didn't knowingly fail to report. He reported what was necessary.
Briefly, Your Honor, on behalf of Coach Carl Williams, proof has shown that, first of all, Coach Williams was not aware of 4 sexual assaults as it was put forth on the end. As a matter of fact, according to the police officer, the player instructed told him that they did not inform the coaches what had happened. Proof has become clear today that contrary to what's been in the media, contrary to what's been in ESPN, there was no attempt to hide anything. There was no cover-up. There was no not cooperating with the police. It's become clear now what these gentlemen did. The first thing they did was get this young man to the hospital. Which is what I started last time here. Got him to the hospital. Only after they were at the hospital did it become clear when this young man was speaking to the doctor and the coaches what had happened. At that point, the doctor told them, or the officer, or the doctor said, let's call the police. So, Coach Williams has been shown by every witness to whom the question has been asked, has never been trained. He's never been given any documents. He's never been told any procedures to follow. He did what any reasonable person would have done, and that was cooperate with the police. Every witness who testified said they would have done, almost every witness, they would have done just what these gentlemen did. And if these school officials, all the way up through Rick Smith, didn't know to report to authorities back in Hamilton County, how can we expect an ordinary, untrained citizen like Mr. Williams. Nobody had ever told him that he had any responsibility to contact anyone here. And so what did he do? Fully cooperated with law enforcement. That this case has been exaggerated, he's been dragged through the mud, when in fact what he did was fully cooperate. And if these people don't know, or didn't think that DCS should have been called, how is he supposed to know? Judge, there's been no willful failure to report on behalf of Mr. Williams. We ask that you dismiss those charges.
Your Honor, on behalf of Jesse Nagel, I want to thank you for the time you've given us to present the evidence to your court. These are serious issues, one that needs a full hearing. I do appreciate you giving us this hearing in today's time. The court has wide discretion in this matter. You can bind this thing over if you want to. On a finding probable cause and send it to a grand jury. But you don't have to do that under the law. You can find, Your Honor, take judicial notice of the fact that December 24th of 2015, a juvenile court judge sitting in a position like you are authorized a petition based on the aggravated rape that happened in this case. And I don't want to minimize what happened. There is a terrible crime that happened here. There was an aggravated rape and there were sexual assaults of the other three individuals. Law enforcement investigated those crimes and presented those crimes to a juvenile court judge, and there were petitions that were processed on the 24th of December and held until Monday. And that's significant. And the reason I'm asking the court to consider that is this case is going to take a procedural roller coaster if you send this thing to the grand jury. Here's what I mean by that. You have jurisdiction over the juveniles because of your special jurisdiction of juvenile court judge. If you find probable cause on the second of the 600 statute, I don't believe that the Hamilton County grand jury has the jurisdiction to hear this matter. I think it has to go to the Sevier County jurisdiction because the criminal court judge in Hamilton County does not have the same jurisdiction that you have over a child. So if you find the probable cause, this case is going to have to go to Sevier County on the adult charge. It's going to be jurisdiction to where the case happened, or there would be subject matter jurisdiction. Respectfully, I believe that's what's going to happen. Second to that, we get into the idea of these statutes and how ambiguous they are. The juvenile court had actual notice of this matter. And so when you look at these reporting requirements, and you know, and you now know, and you didn't know before today, and I didn't know before today, that the juvenile court judge had actual notice of these matters as of the 24th of December, that cuts off the reporting requirements as a matter of law from these people, in my opinion, respectfully. And I believe that's what the Court of Appeals will ultimately say. I think it is very unclear by these statutes what immediate means. But certainly, if there's a duty to make a call by my client or by these coaches, that duty would have to expire by the time the criminal action has been issued. Otherwise, the statute would make no sense. Because if you take it the other way, then you would say, well, the juvenile court is going to issue a complaint on the 24th of December, and there still would be reporting requirements after the 24th of December. Well, we're already issuing criminal case dockets and the things in court. Obviously, the legislature never intended, and there's no reasonable meaning of statute that would have people requiring to report after the case is already in court. So I think that the bookends we're looking at is the incident happens on the 22nd into the early hours of the 23rd, and it's an official proceeding on the 24th. Relative to my client, Mr. Nathan, you heard the proof. He was not up there as a coach or as an athletic director or assistant principal. He is the father of a victim in this case. He was up there to watch his son play basketball. He didn't receive gas money. He didn't receive a hotel. He's up there on his own expense as a parent watching a basketball tournament. As soon as he hears about this developing situation from these coaches, and he has credible information, he gets himself into a location and he calls his immediate principal, his chain of command. And you've heard the testimony today. It goes from the principal, it goes to the director of schools, it goes to the assistant superintendent, it goes up to the superintendent. Nobody with a straight face can say that any parent, Mr. Naley as a parent, a coach, or any other parent would think to call Department of Children's Services in Hamilton County. Now, they have not been charged with not calling Department of Children's Services in Sevier County. They're charged with not calling Department of Children's Services in Hamilton County. It is not reasonable to think that they would have called Department of Children's Services between the 23rd and the 24th based on what they knew. As I said, the jurisdiction ends on the 24th respectfully based upon the juvenile court judge's actions. So you've got to take a look at my client and say, what is he doing as a parent and as a coach, as a former coach, as an athletic director on the 23rd? He's calling everybody he knows through the chain of command. He's acting reasonably. You heard from the men that testified here today from the county school system. Had they had any criticism, they would have told you what that is. I don't know how this matter came to be investigated the way it did and how we ended up with a criminal complaint on a misdemeanor in front of Your Honor, but you can end it today. You have the jurisdiction to do that. You have the discretion to do that. You can end this case today. And when you do that, you are not in any way minimizing the serious aggravated rape that took place in Sevier County. That is a case, that is an independent case, and that's being prosecuted by the detective who testified today. But what you are doing is you're taking into account what you have heard, and you're the only person that's heard this, about the actions of this paid coach, this volunteer assistant coach, and this father who happened to be up there who's also an athletic director. I don't think that there's any way you can find fault with these three men and how they reacted to a terrible situation at a Christmas tournament. I wish there was some way we could undo the behavior of the actual basketball players, but we can't, Your Honor. And that's for a different court, and the punishment should be meted out according to the proof that's presented at that trial. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Davis, let me ask you before you leave, do you distinguish the 403 matter with the 605 regarding the procedural issues raised?
Well, I think under the 400 matter, Your Honor, that's the one, that's the shall language. And I think that it says that you haven't asked them to their plea yet, right? So when you ask them at the end of this hearing how do they plead, and if they say not guilty by the 400 language, that requires you to send it to the grand jury. And I think that I think you can get rid of it before you ask them to do that. You can get rid of this case now that you've heard the proof. But I think you're right. You asked him to do that. You asked Mr. Nathan to plead not guilty, and he enters the plea not guilty. You shall, by the reading of that statute, send it to the grand jury. And what I'm telling you, Your Honor, and please take time to research this and think it through, the legislature never anticipated this factual situation. And respectfully, this case is going to go off into a procedural nightmare, and it will not survive based on what I've heard. And I mean that with all due respect. I think you've heard the proof, and I think you've heard the actions of these men, and I think you're the one who has the power and authority to end this.
Mr. Pinkston, in response to Obviously, this is a probable cause hearing, it's not a trial. Nevertheless, I've taken several pages of notes that I think relate to probable cause. Mr. Davis has now raised an issue for the first time. I think it's incumbent on me to take a few minutes to review my notes and come back and render a decision. For everyone's convenience, well, I'm not so much concerned about convenience. I was going to try to give you a time certain, but the court will be in recess, not for very long, but for as long as it takes. All rise.